Elena had always lived in a house full of laughter and purpose, not because she was rich, but because she was kind. She ran a modest bookstore inherited from her parents, nestled in the corner of an old neighborhood. She didn't chase trends, didn't envy lavish lives. Her joy came from small things: a warm cup of tea, a book that made her cry, and the feeling of being useful to others. That's why she married Damien. At least she thought that was why. Damien was different from the men who came into her store and talked more about themselves than the stories they pretended to love. He was intelligent, charming, confident. He said all the right things, and he made her feel like she was seen. They married in a simple ceremony behind the shop. No extravagant dress, no orchestra, just friends, poetry, and promises. But time, as it does, began peeling back layers. Damien had dreams of his own, big ones. He wanted more money, more recognition, more power, and he didn't understand why Elena seemed so content. "You could do more than this bookstore," he once said. "Why would I want more when I already love what I do?" she replied. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They hired help to keep the house running when business picked up, a young woman named Julia, shy and barely 18. Elena noticed her immediately: thin wrists, worn shoes, eyes that flickered between fear and hope. Most people would have seen her as just another maid. But Elena saw something more. She spoke gently to her, taught her how to read between chores, and gave her evenings off to rest. She helped Julia write her first resume, set aside money for her future, and treated her with dignity, not charity. To Julia, Elena wasn't just an employer, she was a lifeline. What neither of them knew then was how deeply that kindness would matter, because not long after, Elena would lose everything. It started with subtle changes. Damien became harder to reach. He stopped answering her calls during the day, claiming meetings, traffic, or bad reception. He no longer asked about her bookshop or smiled at her stories. He stopped sharing his thoughts, or if he did, they were cold and calculated, like a man speaking to an investor, not a wife. He spent more nights away from home, claiming business trips. Elena believed him at first. Trust was her nature, but something else had shifted too. Something far more dangerous. He began to question her kindness. "Why are you wasting time teaching the maid to read?" "She's more than a maid," Elena said quietly. "She's trying." "You can't fix everyone," he snapped. "That's your problem. Always trying to lift people who'll never rise." The words cut deeper than they should have, because they weren't just about Julia. They were about who Elena was. Someone who loved gently, someone who believed in goodness, even when it wasn't fashionable. Damien had started seeing that as weakness. And Elena, heartbreakingly, started wondering if he was right. But Julia knew better. She had seen how Elena gave quietly, how she paid extra for groceries when Julia's mother was sick, how she fixed a broken heater in the guest room before fixing her own. She saw the woman who stayed up late proofreading her job application, even while her own marriage was unraveling. To Julia, Elena was a lighthouse, and even though she was just a maid, she was watching, learning, remembering. Then came the collapse. One evening, Elena returned from the shop to find the house eerily quiet. Julia wasn't there. She'd gone home for the weekend. Elena walked into the bedroom and froze. The wardrobe was open, empty on one side, Damien's side. On the nightstand, a white envelope. Inside, a short, cold letter. "This isn't working. I've moved out. Don't contact me." No warning, no explanation. No conversation. Just gone. Her knees buckled. She sank to the floor, the paper trembling in her hand, the walls spinning. The air left her lungs, as if even the house couldn't bear to breathe without him. But what hurt more than the betrayal was the absence of closure. The man she had trusted with her heart, her life, her dreams, had walked away like she was nothing more than a contract expired. What she didn't know yet was that he hadn't just left her emotionally, He had taken something else, too. Everything. In the days that followed Damien's departure, Elena moved like a ghost through her own home. Everything looked the same on the outside. The kitchen still smelled of cinnamon, the books still lined the hallway, but inside it all felt hollow. She didn't cry at first. Shock has a way of numbing tears. She answered calls from worried friends with forced calm, telling them, "We're just taking space. He needs time." But she knew. He wasn't coming back. Then the real blow came. She visited the bank to transfer. Funds for her shop, payroll for 2 employees, a restock of bestsellers, the usual. She smiled at the clerk and passed over her account details. The woman behind the counter frowned. "There seems to be a hold on your account." Elena blinked. "Hold?" The woman leaned in, typing more. "Actually, it's been closed." "Transferred. By joint authorization, 3 days ago." Elena's pulse quickened. "That's impossible. I didn't authorize anything. It was signed electronically. You're listed as a co-owner, not the primary." She stood there, frozen, as the truth unraveled. Damien hadn't just left her. He had taken everything. Their savings, their investment portfolio, even the emergency fund she'd kept for the shop. It was all in his name. He had planned it. He had known. And he had left her not just heartbroken, but financially ruined. Elena walked out of the bank in a daze. The air felt too sharp, the traffic too loud. The city she had once loved suddenly felt unfamiliar, even hostile. That night, she sat on the kitchen floor with unpaid bills scattered around her and a letter from the landlord threatening eviction, from the bookstore if rent wasn't paid within 2 weeks. Her hands trembled as she stared at a photo of her and Damien taken the first year of their marriage. He was smiling in it. "Who are you?" she whispered. Then came a knock. Julia. She had come back from her weekend and found the house dark, quiet, Elena unreachable. She let herself in with the key Elena had given her, just in case. She found her there, on the floor, pale, shaking, surrounded by debt. "Miss Elena?" she whispered. The post spread faster than she imagined. Within a day, the local paper picked it up. Then a regional women's empowerment page. Comments flooded in, some offering encouragement, others asking how they could help. People began sharing their own stories of betrayal and rebuilding. Elena didn't ask for thousands. She asked for enough to save the shop, to buy time. She got triple. Old customers returned. Book lovers from other cities ordered online. A retired teacher donated $500 with a note that read, "You sold me my first copy of To Kill a Mockingbird in 2003. I never forgot your kindness." Elena sat in disbelief. All these years she thought kindness went unnoticed. But it turns out, kindness just took its time. Elena didn't speak. She just burst into tears, the first real sobs since it happened. Raw, shaking, breaking, and Julia, the girl she once lifted, now knelt beside her, to lift her. What Elena didn't know was that the girl she had once rescued from poverty and silence was about to return the favor in a way no one saw coming. Julia stayed the night. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer cliches. She made tea, sat quietly, and when Elena's tears slowed to silence, she covered her with a blanket and whispered, "We'll figure it out." The word "we" echoed louder than any comfort. In the morning, Julia made breakfast. Not because Elena asked, but because she remembered all the times Elena had done the same for her, back when she was a scared teenager too shy to sit at the table. Now she set a tray down, waited for Elena to sip, then asked gently, "Tell me everything," and so she did. Elena poured out the truth about Damien, the bank account, the bookstore hanging by a thread. She showed her the eviction letter, the invoices, the canceled orders. "He took everything," Elena said softly. "Even my pride," Julia shook her head. "He only took money. You still have your name, your reputation, your story." Elena looked up. That doesn't pay rent. No, Julia said, but it pays something else. Over the next few days, Julia became a force Elena didn't know she needed. She reorganized the house, took charge of meals, cleaned not just out of duty, but as if clearing space for hope to breathe again. Then, one afternoon, Julia pulled a folder from her bag and handed it to Elena. What's this? Applications, Julia said. Business grants, local women's, funds, crowdfunding sites, all of it. Elena blinked. You did all this? I watched you build a bookstore from nothing. You gave me my first paycheck, my first book, my first chance. Now it's my turn. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. I don't even know what to say. Julia smiled. Say yes. That night, Elena opened her laptop. For the first time since Damien left, she wrote, really wrote. Not bank forms or apology, emails, but her story. Her truth. She uploaded a post to a local crowdfunding site titled, He left me with nothing, but I'm not done yet. She told them about her bookstore, her betrayal, her dream. She didn't ask for pity. She asked for a second chance and clicked publish. What happened next? No one expected. 2 weeks later, Elena stood in front of the bookstore with Julia beside her. The lights were back on, the shelves were restocked, a new banner hung across the entrance. Customers came, some to shop, others just to hug her. One woman brought flowers, another baked a cake. Elena didn't just reopen a business, she reopened her soul. Julia helped behind the counter. She wasn't a maid anymore, she was a partner. She organized orders, tracked inventory, even handled customer service. One customer asked if they were sisters. Elena smiled. We're something better. Somewhere across town, Damien sat in a cafe, scrolling through his feed. He saw the headline, Woman Rebuilds After Husband's Betrayal, with help from former maid. He nearly choked on his drink. There was her photo, Elena, standing proudly in front of the bookstore he once called a cute little hobby. And beside her was Julia, holding a clipboard and smiling like a woman who'd won the world. His hands tightened around the phone. He hadn't expected her to rise. He thought she'd fold, quietly, painfully, like so many he'd stepped on. But instead, the woman he discarded became a symbol, and the girl he dismissed stood beside her, shining. A month after the reopening, Elena received an email from a literary foundation offering to sponsor a reading program for underserved youth through her store. We were inspired by your story, they wrote. They sent funds, then books, then came interviews, podcasts. She was asked to speak at a local college about resilience and entrepreneurship. She was hesitant at first. I'm not a motivational speaker, she told Julia. You don't have to be, Julia said. You just have to tell the truth. Elena stood on stage, hands trembling, and told her story. Every stutter was met with silence, every sentence with tears. At the end, they stood. All of them. She wasn't just a woman who lost everything. She was proof that loss wasn't the end. One quiet evening, Elena found Julia at the counter sketching dress designs on the back of an invoice. What's this? Elena asked. Julia flushed. Just something I do for fun. Elena looked closer. The sketches were beautiful, elegant, smart, detailed. Have you ever thought of designing for real? Julia shrugged. It's expensive. Courses, equipment. It's just a dream. Elena smiled. So was this bookstore, until someone believed in me. Julia looked up, and for the first time, she believed it too. Elena used part of her fundraising, surplus, to enroll Julia in a weekend design course. They created a small corner in the bookstore for hand-sewn bookmarks, tote bags, and journals, all designed by Julia. Customers loved them. Within weeks, orders came in from schools, libraries, and even 2 local boutiques. Julia started signing her items, handmade with Grace J. The girl who once scrubbed floors now stitched her name into the world, and Elena beamed like a proud sister. One rainy afternoon, a man stood outside the bookstore, soaked, unsure, staring at the name on the window. Elena saw him before he entered. Damien. He looked older, not in years, in weight, the kind of weight shame puts on the soul. He stepped in quietly. Hi, Elena. She stood behind the counter, calm, straight-backed. What do you want? He looked around. I saw what you built. I don't know. I wanted to say I'm sorry. She didn't flinch. You left me with nothing. I know, he said. I was a coward. Yes, she said. You were. A silence hung. You don't have to forgive me, he added. Good, she replied, because I already did that part for myself. She didn't yell, she didn't cry, she just turned and walked back behind the register, where Julia now stood, handing her a fresh cup of tea. Damien left without another word, and for once, Elena didn't look back. In the months that followed, the bookstore became more than just a place to buy books. It became a gathering spot, a safe space, a little sanctuary for women to tell their stories, for children to discover magic, for neighbors to reconnect. Elena started hosting Friday, evenings with tea, a storytelling hour where anyone could read, perform, or share something personal. Julia always sat in the front row, notebook in hand. One night, a girl shared how her father left, and she thought life was over. But then she read about Elena, and she realized, we're not broken, we're rebuilding. Elena never sought recognition, but one day, an email arrived from the National Women's Council. You've been nominated for the Phoenix Award for turning personal loss into public hope. She was stunned. Julia cried. The ceremony was simple, elegant. Elena wore a dress Julia made, soft gray, lined with gold thread. On stage, she held the award and said, I thought I needed a partner to be strong. Turns out, I needed purpose. And I found that, in the people who didn't leave, even when I had nothing. The crowd stood, Julia stood, and Elena's heart, once shattered, now felt full again. 5 years later, Chapter 2 Bookstore was a landmark. There were 2 new branches, one in the city, one near Julia's childhood town, run by women, for women. They launched a scholarship program in Julia's name, funded dozens of girls into creative programs. Elena no longer managed the shelves. She mentored young women, spoke in schools, hosted book fairs, and Julia? She became a full-time designer. Her brand, Thread and Grace, had its own website. Her designs featured in 3 regional magazines, 2 women, 1 story, and a bond built not on blood, but on faith, loyalty, and timing. One morning, Elena received a handwritten letter from Julia. One afternoon, as the sun spilled through the bookstore window, a little bell jingled. A young woman walked in, nervous, holding a folder. Are you Elena? She asked. Elena smiled. Yes. I read your story. I don't know where to go. I just need help. Elena stood, held out her hand. Then you've come to the right place. Julia watched from across the store and smiled. Because this wasn't just a shop, it was a cycle, a place where women caught other women before they could fall too far. You once said I wasn't just a maid, but you didn't know that I saw you as more than a boss. You were the first person to see me, the first to trust me, and I never forgot. So when life turned on you, I was never coming to save you. I was coming to return what you gave me, a chance. Elena placed the letter in a frame. It hung behind the register, for every girl who walked in wondering if she was worth it. Years passed. The world changed. Technologies came and went. Styles shifted. But in that little corner of the city, the stories remained. Every Friday, the reading circle grew. Every week, new names joined the wall of women who rose. And every time someone asked, "How did all this begin?" Elena would point to the corner of the room, to the framed letter and the worn-out mango wood chair beside it. It began when one woman chose to give, and another chose not to forget. Some say fate is cruel. Some say it's fair, but Elena learned that fate isn't either. It's just patient. It watches what we do with our time, our choices, our people, and then, when we least expect it, it brings back what we gave away. Not always how we imagined, but often in the way we most needed. On the 10th anniversary of Chapter 2, Julia and Elena sat on the rooftop of the bookstore, watching the city lights below. "Do you ever think about him?" Julia asked. Elena paused. "Sometimes, but only as a chapter, not the whole story." They clinked mugs, just like they did 10 years ago. 2 women, 2 cups of tea, and a world rebuilt from ashes. This story didn't begin with betrayal. It began with kindness. And in the end, what Elena gave, not the money, not the teaching, not the tea, but the belief in another woman's worth. That's what came back to her, because in life, it's not always the ones you chase who save you. Sometimes it's the ones who watched you fall and chose to catch you when you couldn't rise alone. Subscribe to Modern True Stories for more powerful voiceover tales like this.